we've all had that daydream, haven't we? Just packing up, moving somewhere totally different, soaking up a new culture,
Oh, but
maybe finding a slower pace of life.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then reality kind of hits, right?
Yeah, exactly. That
Yeah.
big question mark floats up.
Hmm.
Can I actually afford this? Can I make the numbers work?
That's the bottom line, isn't it? The dream is one thing, but the finances, that's what makes it real or keeps it a dream. And often people look abroad thinking maybe, just maybe, they can get a better quality of life without, totally emptying their bank account.
And Argentina pops up a lot in those conversations. You hear about it being relatively safe, modern enough, amazing scenery, mountains, wine country.
Wine, definitely.
Right. And the people are supposed to be super welcoming. It really does sound appealing.
It is. There's a lot going for it. Argentina has this incredible mix, the energy of Buenos Aires, the wildness of Patagonia. It's got that sort of European feel mixed with South American passion. It pulls people in.
So today we've got something really useful to dig into this. It's a detailed account from a digital nomad who actually lived there in Buenos Aires and kept track of every peso.
Oh, fantastic. So real numbers, not just guesswork.
Exactly. We get a proper look at what things actually cost day to day, way better than just general ideas.
That's crucial. If you're seriously thinking about moving, you need specifics. This nomad's budget, that's like gold dust for planning.
Now, we should mention Argentina's economy. It's been making headlines. There were some big shifts in 2024. Prices definitely went up.
That's true. Inflation has been a factor.
But according to our source, even with those recent bumps, it still comes out as pretty affordable, especially for digital nomads earning in, say, dollars or euros.
That's a key point. While things have gotten pricier locally, if you're bringing in a stronger foreign currency, Argentina's relative affordability often holds up. It cushions the blows somewhat.
So our mission today, basically, is to unpack this nomad's budget. We want to give everyone listening a really clear, honest picture of the costs, cut through the assumptions, get to the facts on the ground.
Okay, let's do it. So first off, the headline number from this digital nomad. Their total monthly spending for two people living in Buenos Aires was around $2,000.
$2,000. Okay, that's a solid starting figure.
Yeah, and that covered, the main things. Rent was the biggest chunk, obviously.
Well, how much was rent, roughly?
In their case, it was about $1,200. But that $2K total also included groceries, getting around, entertainment, eating out, the works.
So it suggests a pretty comfortable lifestyle, not just scraping by.
Exactly. But it's important to say this is just their budget. Your mileage may vary, right, depending on your own habits and what you prioritize.
Sure. So after rent, what were the other big costs? They mentioned food and clothing, which makes sense.
Yep, standard stuff. But what's really interesting is where the costs differed from what they expected compared to back home.
Ah, the surprises. Always good to know those.
Yeah. So things like electronics, getting your computer fixed, surprisingly more expensive in Argentina. That might catch you out.
Huh. You wouldn't necessarily think that.
Right. But then everyday stuff, food, beer, wine, public transport, that was generally cheaper than they were used to.
Okay, so potential savings there on the daily grind items.
Definitely. And that reflects, Argentina's strong agriculture and, in Buenos Aires at least, a pretty good and cheap public transport system. They also mentioned traveling around Argentina is doable and affordable if you book ahead.
Good tip. So exploring beyond the city is on the cards. Now, they did make a point about costs not being the same everywhere in Argentina, right? Buenos Aires versus other places.
No, absolutely not uniform. Buenos Aires is the capital, the economic center, the main tourist hub. So it's definitely pricier than smaller cities like Cordoba or Mendoza.
Makes sense. More demand pushes prices up, especially in those trendy neighborhoods they mentioned, like Palermo or Recoleta.
Exactly. Rent, groceries, everything costs a bit more there. But then you go to the smaller cities, maybe more rural areas.
And the cost of food drops quite a bit. That jumped out at me.
It's a big difference. The source said it's because they produce so much locally. Beef, veggies, fruit, even olive oil. You're closer to the source, literally.
Right. So you're cutting out some of the transport and middleman costs, maybe?
Pretty much. And it connects you more to the local economy, local producers. It could even change how you shop and eat, potentially saving more money.
That sounds quite appealing, actually. But there's always a but, isn't there? What about those super popular tourist spots like down in Patagonia?
Yeah, that's a flip side. While some regions are cheaper, places like Ushuaia or Barilo, especially in high season, prices shoot way up.
How much are we talking?
Well, the Nomad mentioned dinner for two could easily top $60. So suddenly you're looking at costs similar to or even more than Western Europe or the U.S.
Okay, so affordability isn't a guarantee everywhere. Good to know. Let's drill down into rent then. That's usually the biggest headache. What did the Nomad find in Buenos Aires?
The main thing is, it varies a lot. Depends heavily on the barrio, the neighborhood, and critically, how you rent. Like local market versus Airbnb. Big difference.
Okay, so give us some numbers. What about those less touristy, more local neighborhoods they mentioned, like Almagro or Caballito?
In those spots, they were finding one-bedroom places for around $500 a month. Sometimes that even included utilities.
Wow, $500 including utilities.
Yeah. And even a three-bedroom apartment might only be around $750. It sounds incredibly cheap compared to many big cities.
It really does. Okay, and then compare that to the trendy areas, Palermo, Puerto Madero.
Right. In those zones, you're looking closer to $700 for a one-bedroom. And they mentioned some newer, really fancy apartment buildings in Palermo that would likely cost even more. Location, location, location.
Standard rule. But what about Airbnb? Easier maybe, but pricier.
Way easier potentially. You skip some of the local red tape, finding guarantors and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you pay for it. The Nomad suggested you could easily be over $1,000 a month, utilities included, through Airbnb.
Oof. So that's a major trade-off, convenience versus cost.
Exactly. You have to ask yourself what's more important, especially when you first arrive. The ease of Airbnb or saving quite a bit each month by navigating the local rental scene.
A really practical decision point. Okay, let's talk food again. We know it's generally cheaper. Got any specific prices?
Sure. The Nomad gave some examples like chicken was about $2.55 a pound.
Okay.
A dozen eggs, maybe $2 to $3. Apples, around 90 cents a pound. Tomatoes, about $1 a pound. Pretty good prices.
Yeah, definitely appealing. And they said it was easy to buy food everywhere. Supermarkets, little local shops.
Yep. Big supermercados, smaller chinos, or mini markets on every corner, plus the local vergilerias for fruit and veg, and carnicerias for meat. They actually preferred shopping at those smaller spots.
Nice. Adds to the local experience.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about the wine, right? Argentina being a huge producer.
7th largest in the world, I think.
So is it cheap? Please tell me the wine is cheap.
Yes. The source confirms wine is very affordable. And beer, too. The local stuff was like $1.20 a bottle. Those little everyday treats are much easier on the wallet there.
Okay, I'm sold on the food and drink situation. How about getting around town? Transport costs can sneak up on you.
True, but Buenos Aires seems pretty good on that front. A bus or subway ride, about 80 cents.
Seriously, 80 cents?
Yep. And even taxis were reasonable, less than $1.50 per mile, which is way lower than many places.
And they use a card system, the USA BTE card.
Yeah, exactly like the Oyster card in London or MetroCard in New York. You just top it up and tap it on buses in the subway. Super easy.
Simple enough. And for longer distances. Within Argentina.
Also affordable.
Yeah.
You've got the national airline, Aerolíneas Argentinas, plus loads of long-distance bus companies, which are apparently quite comfortable. And some train routes, too, like out to Mar del Plata or Cordoba.
The key being?
Book in advance. Especially around holidays or summer peak season. Prices will jump otherwise.
Standard travel advice, always worth repeating. Okay, we've covered a lot of affordable stuff. What about the things that were surprisingly more expensive?
Right, the sticker shock items. This is where the Nomad's experience is really valuable. Clothing and electronics, those are the big ones.
Clothing. Why is clothing expensive?
Taxes and tariffs, basically. The source mentioned a hefty 35% tariff on imports, plus other import taxes. It really adds up.
35%. Wow, so international brands?
Yep. Nike, Adidas, Quicksilver. Expect to pay more than you might elsewhere. But get this, even clothes made in Argentina weren't cheap. They mentioned a basic pair of jeans costing over $100.
Over $100 for basic jeans. Ouch.
Yeah, and shirts maybe double what you'd pay in neighboring countries. It was a real eye-opener for them.
Okay, definitely pack smart then. But wasn't there an exception for clothing, something that was affordable?
Yes. Leather goods. Argentina is a huge leather producer, like 6th in the world. So belts, shoes, bags, jackets, even those traditional make gourds, you can find really good quality leather for reasonable prices.
Ah, okay. So maybe leave the jeans at home. Buy leather boots when you get there.
Could be a strategy. Now, electronics, similar story, unfortunately.
Real taxes again.
Exactly. Tariffs up to 35% there, too. The Nomad gave a pretty shocking comparison. Electronics cost, on average, 112% more than in the U.S.
112%.
Yep. Think Apple products, other big-name brands, potentially double the price you'd pay in the U.S. or Europe. As a digital nomad relying on your tech, that's a big factor.
Huge. I mean, That must be incredibly tough for locals, too.
It really is. The source pointed out what a burden this is for Argentinians who need phones and laptops for work, especially if they're not on high incomes. There is apparently a used electronics market in Buenos Aires.
But the advice is?
Bring everything you need with you. Laptop, phone, chargers, adapters. Don't plan on buying major electronics there unless you absolutely have to.
Got it. Crucial heads up. Okay, let's shift gears to something more fun entertainment. What's the scene like and what does it cost?
Lots of options. Live music, theater, festivals. The Nomad mentioned going to Lollapalooza for under $300, which isn't bad for a big festival.
Okay, and just a regular night out. Bars, clubs.
Cover charges were usually somewhere between $5 and $20. Pretty standard.
What about a tango show? That feels like a must-do in Buenos Aires.
Definitely iconic. Prices vary a lot, though. From maybe $50 for just the show up to $200 if you get dinner and drinks included.
Right, depends on the package. And theater. They highlighted that, too.
Yeah, apparently Buenos Aires has a fantastic theater scene. And tickets can be really affordable, starting around $10, maybe up to $50 for fancier seats or productions. Great value for culture.
Sounds brilliant. And then, the big one, soccer, football.
The national passion. The source called it a must-have experience.
Expensive.
Yeah, especially for the big teams like Boca Juniors or River Plate. Tickets can range from $100 up to $400. And you need to book way, way in advance because demand is insane.
Okay, so a potential budget buster, but maybe worth it for the atmosphere.
Could be. Depends on your priorities.
All right, last category. General lifestyle stuff. Gyms, fitness, outdoors.
Pretty reasonable, mostly. Gym memberships in VA were around $25 a month for a decent place. Yoga classes, maybe $10 to $20 each.
Not bad at all.
And once you get out of the city, hiking is mostly free, unless you're in a national park.
Which Argentina has some amazing ones of, right?
Oh, incredible. Tierra del Fuego down south, for example. There are entrance fees for foreigners, about $40 for Tierra del Fuego in 2025, they said. Argentina is huge for trekking, skiing, even surfing in some spots.
Skiing. What about lift passes, say somewhere like Bariloche?
Bariloche is a major South American ski hub. A day pass there was around $115. Again, book early, especially in peak season.
Okay, so summing it all up, it's a real mix, isn't it? Some things very affordable, others surprisingly not.
Exactly. This Nomad's budget is a fantastic guide, a snapshot. But everyone's experience will be slightly different based on how they live and spend.
So for everyone listening, thinking about maybe making that move, what's the main takeaway here?
I think it's that, yes, despite recent economic stuff, Argentina can still be an affordable and amazing place to live, especially if your income is from abroad. But you absolutely need to plan. Be aware of where the costs lie. Cheap food, cheap transport, expensive electronics, expensive clothes. Know the difference.
That awareness seems key. Really practical advice. So it leaves us with a final thought, maybe for you listening. Considering this blend, the affordable rent in some areas, cheap wine, but then the pricey Nikes and iPhones, what trade-offs would you be willing to make for that experience of living somewhere as vibrant and culturally rich as Argentina?
Yeah. What's most important to you? Definitely something to think about as you do your own digging.